In a surprise move, Ukraine and its allies are trying to change the tide of the war. Washington has quote-unquote secretly shipped long-range missiles to Kyiv for use in its battle to ward off the Russian offensive. And they have already been put to use. Ukraine struck a Russian airfield in Crimea that was about 165 kilometers from its front lines. The Army Tactical Missile System, or ATACMS, is a long-range guided surface-to-surface missile system manufactured by Lockheed Martin. It has a maximum range of around 300 kilometers, which is well beyond the capabilities of conventional artillery weapons. The 13-feet-long missile can be fired from the HIMARS and MLRS M270 platforms. These are the two vehicles Ukraine has been using for years now. The missiles, which are also used by the US Marines, come in at least 5 different variants with distinct capabilities. The M39, the M39A1, the M48, the M57, and lastly the M57E1. Some can deliver hundreds of smaller bomblets like the cluster artillery shells given to Ukraine last year, while others are single warheads packing hundreds of pounds of explosive material. The two cluster versions of missiles have a maximum range of 300 kilometers and can carry either 300 or 950 bomblets. The three single warhead variants have ranges up to 300 kilometers and are all guided with the assistance of GPS. But why did Ukraine want these missiles so desperately? Well, for one, ATACMS would allow Ukrainian forces to target all enemy positions in the Russian-occupied territories, including airfields, supply routes, storage sites and facilities inside Crimea. The other advantage of ATACMS would provide, other than its range, is the fact that it is ground-launched. Ukraine's other long-range missiles have to be launched from a specially adapted aircraft, of which it has relatively few. The development comes after the Biden administration debated for months whether to send the 300-kilometer range ATACMS missiles to Ukraine. 165-kilometer mid-range ATACMS were supplied last September over concerns that Ukraine would use them to attack targets deep inside Russia. Now, to take this further, we are being joined by Glenn Diesen from Oslo. He is a professor of international relations at the University of Southeastern Norway. Thank you so much for joining us here on this broadcast, Mr. Diesen. For 2 long years, Washington has refused to supply Kyiv with long-range missiles, saying that it could target deep inside Russian territory and then, of course, escalate the conflict. What changed now?
Well, obviously the reason why the Americans were so hesitant was because this is an immense escalation on the side of the Americans. But as we've seen over the past few weeks, Ukraine is very evidently losing. We see a collapse. Its military is exhausted. Town after town is collapsing. Soldiers are fleeing or surrendering. So many suspected that collapse could even occur now this summer. And which begs the question, how does the United States react? Does it begin negotiations or escalate? And the US has made it clear it will not take NATO expansionism off the table, which is the primary demand of Russia. And as even the NATO Secretary General has said, weapons are the path to peace. So the answer, therefore, has been escalation. And just to repeat, I think it's very hard to overestimate what a huge escalation these long-range missiles actually are.
Mr. Diesen, with Ukraine's failed counteroffensive and West now funding not one, two wars, which direction do you think the war is heading now?
No, I think that the war will probably become much more bloody. I don't think the tides can be turned. This war, in my opinion, has already been lost. But given its escalation, I think you will see more ruthless targeting, perhaps from the Russian side as well. And again, I don't think any serious analysts believe that the war can be won by NATO in Ukraine. But as the New York Times reported, the weapons can keep the war going until the US election. And an important thing in American politics is when it's election year, everything is seen through this prism. So I think the war can be delayed, but it's been lost already, in my opinion.
Mr. Deason, you make an interesting point there. Thank you so much for joining us here on WION and getting us all those insights. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.